let me tell you about this other thing that I did. And so they at that point couldn't sort of argue with me that I'm, useless guy, I'm just a theory kind of guy. But I did want to go to only industrial research at that point, so I didn't apply to academia because I was unhappy with the fact that my thesis topic was one where my professor was not into building systems. This is Avi Silberschatz, who has written textbooks on operating systems and database systems. And so I was keen on dirtying my hands in a real world kind of environment, but at the same time I didn't want to just get into products and disappear into the bowels of the product organization. I wanted to be in this, I have my feet in both camps kind of position. By going to a research lab in a commercial organization like IBM, I could have the cake and eat it too, be able to publish papers and get glory on that side as well as try to impact IBM's products. If you go into, something like a research lab of the government, Lawrence Berkeley Lab and so on, you may be able to publish papers, but you won't be able to have the product kind of impact because they don't produce commercial products. If you go to academia, you could try to have commercial impact through startups and so on, but that's a lot iffier path than going to an industrial research lab. So that I've already said some of these things. So the good thing about this particular research lab that I joined and the particular group I joined was the fact that it's the one from which this relational database wave started. Ted Codd, the father of relational databases, was in my department. While he did the conceptual work, the actual realization of that vision was done by other people, including Jim Gray, my first manager at IBM Research, Patricia Selinger. She is the mother of cost-based query optimization. She subsequently became an IBM fellow and things like that. So I was in the midst of a group of very well-known people. So I didn't need to be told anything very explicitly in formal presentations and so on, why it's a good thing to be a long-term technical career-oriented person, what the pros and cons are and so on, because in everyday conversations in my lab, all that came through. It was all in the air, and through osmosis I could absorb all this. The reason I say this is because when I came to IBM India on my assignment, IBM India, in a matter of 19 months grew from 43,000 employees to 73,000 employees. When you have that kind of growth rate, and the company was already new in India, meaning we had gotten out of India in 78, we came back in 92 as a joint enterprise with the Tatas, 50-50 ownership. It was not even called IBM, Tata Information Systems Limited. Later on came to be called Tata IBM, and then IBM bought out the Tata equity and became IBM India. So when you have lots of youngsters like that, there's hardly any senior people. So through osmosis you can't get any of this because there aren't enough senior people to go around for all this large number of junior employees to learn about what it means to have technical career. You also don't get to work on a daily basis with these more senior people and thereby work on something very advanced but under the guidance of these senior people who could correct you and so on. So if you're a bunch of youngsters all very inexperienced, then you will only be assigned lowly projects, not fancy projects, right? So this is part of the reason why in India we didn't have the luxury of very intellectually challenging projects being sent. Any of that outsourcing that was done even within IBM kind of companies was the more boring thing that got done over here. The spec is done over there and the actual implementation is done here. The actual architectural design and algorithm generation and all that was rarely accomplished over here. So how do you under that condition move from doing basic work to advanced work? That's where you need to be a lot more aggressive. You need to do things beyond the call of duty, and you have to spend more time reaching out to people elsewhere. So all the communication skills and all that become extremely important under that condition. You cannot just say, I'll just put the blame on somebody else that I'm not able to get fancy work to do and tough luck, or the other route that people take, oh, I'm going to become a project manager and become a manager, and that's an easier path to climb the ladder than to go up the technical ladder. for India to move up the food chain and get to doing more advanced work, meaning producing patents and fancy innovations, if everybody takes this easy route of saying, oh, I'll do a little bit of technical work, and even if I stay technical for a longer time, I'll go nibble on many different topics and make my resume look good. I can mention one language, another language, blah, blah, blah. But I don't spend any amount of significant time in any one topic, absorb all the good, bad, and ugly over there, internalize what the issues are, and identify first what the problems are before I can even come up with solutions. You won't be able to contribute anything very significant that's earth-shattering and such. And by that, I don't mean, you need to necessarily generate research papers or patents, but even coming up with great product ideas, which is not a Me Too kind of product, requires that you breathe on a long-term basis, not just while you're at work, but even while you're showering, this, that, some of these fundamental things that have to do with the domain. And so it's those sorts of attributes that are needed in plenty. You as an individual may not care for this, but if the country as a whole or a large enough population of techies think this way, right out the door after they graduate, or they think, which is one other problem I have come across, there's a sense of entitlement these days when kids come out of colleges. They think that they deserve everything from day one in terms of car, this, that, all the materialistic things, which then warps their thinking completely as to what kind of jobs they take up and what they aspire to in any job they even take up. Money becomes the be-all, end-all criterion for deciding between this job versus that job, not actually the content of the job. All that in the longer run is not going to get you anywhere, even if you are going up the management chain or whatever. And too much of sharing of information about who makes how much money. Your milk vendor knows everything, your vegetable vendor knows, because everybody talks about their salary in an open way in the Indian environment. All that leads to that becoming the focus of attention. If I want to prove that I am smarter than him, I by hook or crook get a job where I get paid more, and then I think that hence I have proven that I am smarter than Suresh. Whereas in an environment where salaries are not so openly discussed, these other things become then the criterion for comparison of different people's accomplishments, meaning awards, your face showing up on the wall because you did something phenomenal that got you an outstanding innovation award or an IEEE fellow kind of thing, or a paper that gets cited a lot. It's these non-money oriented things. Even though there may be money associated with the awards, it's not the actual money amount that's important, the prestige nature of the award that becomes important. So then people will pay more attention to the technical content and not get sidetracked by salary kind of issues. And so this will also, make people take up jobs where they spend more time on a given topic, in-depth understanding what it is and what works, what doesn't work, and so on. And so, yeah, you can say startups and such could provide that kind of environment. But again, if you are doing a Me Too kind of startup, oh, there is Facebook, I'm going to have the Indian version of Facebook. Or there is eBay, I love the Indian version. Or, Travelocity, and then I love whatever that thing, Make My Trip, and so on. Then there may not be that much of innovation involved. You may do it more efficiently, whatever, but that's not necessarily high-end kind of innovation. What else do I want to say? So this particular group, as I mentioned, happened to produce a bunch of IBM fellows subsequently. And even though the work that we did in that project itself didn't become a big deal in terms of commercial impact, because we had made certain assumptions in that project that didn't turn out to be valid assumptions in the real world. We assumed that every node of this distributed network was running the same instance of the database system, relational, but relational of a certain kind. Later on, it turned out heterogeneity was more common than homogeneity. Different nodes may be running different versions of DBMSs from the same vendor or even different vendor. So being able to do heterogeneous data access across different nodes in a way where the querying person assumes everything is in one place with one data model, required a lot more problems to be solved. So we, at the end of this R-Star project, decided that we had learned enough about relational database systems from various products that IBM itself had put out, research projects we had had, and other companies' products and so on, Oracle and companies like that. So we thought we should now re-architect with all the knowledge we had gathered a modern version of database systems, which from the beginning are designed in a way that they are more extensible in terms of how you can add support for new data types and other kinds of functionality easily, because the internals are done in a way where it's easier to do those things than, in a sense, a hardwired way in which the original system was done. So this was the context in which certain aspects were to be thought about in a brand new way. At that point I said, okay, I had heard that there are these other problems which were not going to be the focus of this project that had been unsolved problems. So I said, this is a golden opportunity to re-examine these unsolved problems in the context of a brand new system being built. Not too many people get the luxury of being there from the ground up when a new system is being built. So even though there was a lot of grumbling in my immediate surroundings, people thought, why is Mohan wasting his time digging into this when we, some of the smarter people, meaning people with experience as well as actually older people, had looked at it for a while and come to the conclusion that this wasn't a solvable problem. And in any case, the focus of the project is not this concurrency control and recovery. Why should he be trying to spend his time on this? So it required fair amount of guts on my part, a certain sense of, I think there is something here that's worth pursuing, even though it's going against conventional wisdom. And the community as a whole, the research community had declared this whole area a solved area, because this Phil Bernstein and a couple of other people had put out a book on this whole area of recovery and concurrency in database systems. It turned out, after I started digging through all this, what people thought was solved actually had barely been scratched on the surface. And in spite of gazillion papers existing on a given topic, namely indexing methods and concurrency control for indexing, they had not even solved anything very interesting. There was lots more that even then existing products had inside of them, research prototypes, which were never documented. And so I thought that I should, and again, goes back to the point about documentation. Even the research people in IBM San Jose, who had written a lot of papers on many aspects of System R, had left one area really not documented, even internally, let alone externally. Meaning, forget writing research papers and letting the rest of the world know how they did indexing. Even for internal consumption, they didn't have any videos or any of that, or any specifications. So I said, let me now dig through the source code and everything. And I even went back 15 years and all that of old stuff. And some of this had been turned into products. And so our people were saying, if you find bugs there, who cares? This is now the monkey is on the back of the product people, and Mohan, you shouldn't be spending your time on all this. And so I took a lot of chances there, because in some of these environments you will discover when you start working, producing something quickly and showing it makes certain people happy, the manager types. Because they think that there is progress because something is being shown running, a cutesy demo is being shown out to her. This other joker is sitting there scratching his head and doing some deep thinking, design, architecture, blah, blah, blah. They think that that's all BS.